I want to show you how to gather your form input using vanilla PHP, and it's really going to be very simple. There are quite a lot of other ways you can actually do this. You can use something like JavaScript, you can use some PHP framework to do this. But I want to see how we can basically do that in that of the PHP. For instance, all these fields that we have in here currently that are just basically empty. Then if you hit on something like submit button right here, it tries to check and tells you that the field are just basically invalid. All right, so that means that you did not actually type anything in. So let's say, for instance, you put your first name right here and then you try to hit on the submit button. You see that this part is validated, but the rest of the fields that are actually here that do not actually have anything in them, they are still basically red right here. All right, so and then even if you enter a name, let's say you combine it with number, which means that this type of characters are actually not basically correct. All right, let me just do let's say this is going to be my surname, and maybe I add 123, then I try to hit on submit. You see that it still reports that kind of an error. So it means that numbers are actually not required to be found in a name. So if you take that away and then we hit on submit, you see that part becomes validated. So just the same pattern for the rest of the things that we have in here, except that email has to just follow another pattern and that of the phone number right here. So that's just basically what that is. All right, so we can enter a phone number in here, and this is basically the email address. And then if we hit on submit, notice that everything in here actually correct. So if we hit on submit, you see that it will get this success message right here. And then it was able to print out all of the data that we just typed in just now. So let's see how we can actually do this. So what I want to do right here is I do have Laragon installed on my system, and that's just basically what I'm going to just be using because we do have Apache server in it. So if you have Laragon, you can just go ahead and launch that. If you don't have this, you can also use something like XAMPP. So if you open up XAMPP right here, I want to launch that. So you can use your XAMPP if you don't have Laragon. So you can just turn on your Apache and you'll be good to go with this, right? So what I want to do now is let's create a folder for this project we want to work on right now. And to do that, I want to go to where the location of my Laragon is. So if we go to my PC right here, that's my hard drive, and I want to go into Laragon. So let's open up Laragon right here, and let's go to the host, which is www, and I want to create a new folder right here, and let's call this form data, something of that nature, and let's go ahead and open that up with our editor. So if I right click on that, show more, and I want to open that up with my Visual Studio Code, which is right here. And what I would like to do is to create a new file in here. So if I hit in here, I'll just say index.php, open that up, and we can also create CSS in this particular page. So let me do that right here. So this is going to be style.css. Of course, if this was a production application, you would create a folder for the CSS and then try to put the style inside of it. So let's generate our HTML boilerplate on this. So if I hit exclamation, I want to hit tab, and it's just basically going to generate this for me. So what I'm going to do right here is going to be very simple. So let's try to give this a title. Let's say grab from data using PHP. All right. So that's just what that is right now. The first thing is to go ahead and see how we can create those forms that we already have. So I'm going to just create a div, and that's going to have a class. And let's say that class is actually going to be, so let's call that form dash card, and we can just basically close this out right here. So within here, this is just basically going to be where we'll put the form in here. So if you want to do that, let me just add in my form action, and I want to go ahead and set that to be equal to empty strings. And the reason that I'm doing that is just because I want to process the form on the same page. And I know that a lot of people might actually argue with this, that is just basically want to create a new file for the processing of the file, which is just fine, but we are not really building a production application. So I think it's fine to just process that within this particular page instead of creating series of files just for this little project. So what I want to do here, I want to set a method and set that to post, and that should be that. So let's close the tag down here, and we'll do this right here. So we're going to need some fields right here. The first one is going to be the first name and then the last name. If we want to create that, we can just basically do that within this particular place right here. So how do we do that? I want to put that in a div. So I'm going to just do div class, and I want to just basically call this something like a input group. So let's do input dash group, and let's try to close that down here. So within this div right here, I want to go ahead and then enter my input in here. So to do that, we just do input and I'm going to have to have a type, so that will be equal to, and this is just basically going to be a text. So we'll do text right here, and then after that we need to have a name for this field, which I'm going to basically call a first name. So it's going to be first name, and then we can also have a placeholder field. So it's going to be placeholder, and you can set that to be equal to, maybe we'll just simply say something like first name. So let's say first name, and we can also have a value right here, which we are going to just basically set to some dynamic variable. We're going to come back to that. But for now, we can also set something like a class for this in case we want to just basically start the output. I mean, the results right here, like the form was actually showing red all around it right here. If you hit on submit and then there's nothing inside of the value right here, we can basically do that. But I'm going to come back to that at a later time. Let me just stop this right here. And what I would like to do right here is to, let's make sure this is fully closed. I want to copy this. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate this a couple more times. And that's just basically going to be for other fields that I want to basically create. So we need to have a last name. So I want to take this away and just do LA last name right there. And we can change this to last name. So this is going to be last name right there. And we're also going to have a field where we'd like to have an email, right? So let's try to put that down here. And to do that, let's change this from what it is right now. I'm going to just change that to email. And I don't even know the order, which I kind of, okay, I think it should be the phone number first of all before we get to the email. So let's do phone right here. Let's do tel rather, HTML5 tag. And I want to change this to phone, so it's going to be phone, and the place holder right here is actually going to be, let's call this phone number, and the last one is just basically going to be that of the email. So let's change this to email, and we can change the name to email, and let's change this to email address. So we got that right there, and we're going to, the final thing we basically would like to have is going to be basically that of the submit button, right? So let's try to create that down here. So let's have a submit button right here. So it's going to be button, and we can set the type. Basically, we're going to just set the type to something like submit. It's going to be submit, and we can give this a class. Let's call that something like btn, and that's just basically going to be it right there. So we can just, the text we want people to see is just basically going to be submit. All right. So what I want to do is I would like to like basically put all of this in separate input groups. Like I did have a div right here. So I want to close this first div right here. So I'm going to just do div, close that. And that means that we need to have an opening. What is it called? Div for the next one right here. And then close that out right here. I should have done this earlier, but that's just fine. I forgot to do that. So for the next one is going to be this way, and we want to close that out here. It's going to be /div, and the last one right here, and let's close this out right here. So that becomes div right there. So that's good. Now let's save the changes and then try to take a look at that. So if we go to our browser, I want to copy this, and let's go to a new tab, and let's try to reference to that particular stuff. So we call that form data, open that up, and this is just basically what we'll have right here. So we want to add some lines of a CSS to make this look beautiful. To do that, so to write some styles for these, let's first of all reference to the body, and we're going to just use that to find out whether we are really connected or not. And to do that, let's just basically go ahead and just say margin, and I want to basically set 0 at all of the margins on this page. And if we do that, the next one is actually going to be padding. So we'll set that to be equal to 0. And the next line is actually going to be the background. So if I do background right here, and I want to basically set that to the following colors. So this is going to be harsh. Then I'm going to do F2, F2, F2 like that. And that should be the kind of background I would like to use right there. So the next one is actually going to be the fonts dash family, and I would like to use something like this. So it's going to be inter, and I'm going to use something like sans serif as an alternative font family right there. Then I'm going to just do display and set that to flex, and after we do that, we can just do justify content. So it's going to be justify content, and I will center that, and after that we can just do a line item, and let's make sure put this on a new line, and that's just basically going to have a value of center, and we can just maybe give this a height of let's make sure type that correctly, and the height can be just 100 VH, which is a viewport height. So if we save the changes right here and then we'll take a look at that from our browser, you're going to notice that the style won't actually come in. And the reason for that is because we haven't actually connected the CSS to um, the index page right here. If you want to do that, you can go to where just between your opening head and ending a head tag right here. And let's try to do that right here. So I'm going to just generate this line like this. This is link ref style sheet, and we can just do style.css, meaning this particular file right here. So let's save the changes. Then if we go back to the browser and then refresh, you see that the style begins to come in. All right. So that is just what we'll go right there. Now, if we want to take the styling further, we can do that. If we take a look in here, after the body, we do have this particular div right here. So let's write a couple lines of styles for that. And if we want to do that, it's a class, so we can do .form dash card, and we can do a couple of things for this right here. So let's say that the background right here of this particular class is actually going to be set to that of the white. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 right here. That should give us white. And then after I do that, let's set a width for that. And I'm going to just basically set that to 420 pixels. And after I do that, let's set a padding for that. And let's say that the padding is actually going to be 40 pixels. So this is going to be 40 pixels. And then after that, we can also set a border radius. So this is going to be border dash radius. And we can just basically set that to let's make that something like 20 pixels, and we can set a border shadow. So it's going to be border dash shadow. This shouldn't be actually called a border shadow, but box shadow. So if we do that right here, you can just set it to following value. The first one is actually going to be 0 pixel by 20 pixels, and I'm going to just do 30 pixel right here. And then after that, we can add an RGB like that. Let me put an A right here for the opacity. All right. Let's say that the red value version of it is actually going to be, let's set that to 0, and we're also going to set this one to 0. But I'm going to just basically set everything in here to 0. So let's make this 0. This becomes 0, and this also becomes 0 value. Then the last value, which is the opacity, we can set that to something like 80%, and we can do 0.08, and that will give us 80% of that. I want to save the changes. Let's terminate this line, and then let's take a look at that right here. And it seems like it's really coming together. Now, what I want to do is I want to paste the rest of the CSS code down here. Let me paste that. And if you take a look right here, so I just added from here, which is just basically the style that is just basically meant for this particular div right here. So after that, we do have some other stuff right here, like the input fields right here, and we're setting that to 100%, and we're setting the margin, and the probably you understand the rest of the things in here. So the only thing that is not actually here right now is this field right here called error dash field, which we're going to create as we move along. But I just kind of added that so that it will speed up what we're just basically doing. Even this particular one right here. So the styles are really not that all that much. And this one is just for the success. We haven't actually created the div that shows the success, but I'd like to show you that. Of course, we are really quite sure of this. We created the submit button. Let's save the changes and take a look at how that is looking so far. So if we refresh in here, you see that it looks just like the original. All right. Now, we want to take this further to working on the PHP part of it, right? So let's try to do that right now. Now, let's try to do the processing of this form, maybe at the top of this page right here. Some people may want to say that it's always better to process it on a different page, and that's fine. But I just want to basically process that on this particular page. So what I would like to do is once someone presses on the submit button right here, and I want to check first of all if the person came into the page following the post method, and if that is actually true, I want to grab onto what the person is actually typing, right? So let's just experiment with that right here. So what I'm going to do right here is let me use an if statement to check if it is a post method first of all. And to do that, we're going to just say if right here. I'm going to just say if, and I will use a server super global variable. So within this super global variable, we're going to use we're going to just say, so we're going to just use this particular method. We're going to just call this request underscore method, and we want to check if that is basically really equal to your post method. So we can just basically do, I want to do a single quote in here, just say post, and I'll throw in my curly brackets in here. And first of all, let's try to grab onto the first input right here, which is basically someone's first name. And I can see I basically used a dash right here. I always like using something like an underscore. I think we made that mistake 2 times right here, so I would like to change that to an underscore. So do change your own to underscore, but even though you use that particular dash that way, you kind of use that just basically fine, but I like to go back to my convention right here. So let's try to grab onto that in here. And to do that, I'm going to use the post super global variable to grab onto that particular input. So right here, let's create a variable, and that's going to just basically be, let's say this is going to be first underscore name, meaning that we're grabbing onto your first name. And I want to see if we can just basically grab that through this post super global variable. And right here within this particular quotes right here, we want to make sure that we use the name attributes right here. So let's capture that and then put that within here. And that job is basically going to be able to allow us to grab onto the stuff. And I'm going to just do us like this. All right. So what we're just basically doing right here is if this basically has something that someone typed into the form, let's say someone types his name right here. Let's say uh, maybe the person's name is this, and we go ahead and just basically grab this particular name. But in a situation where he did not actually type anything right there, we can just basically set that to empty. So this is just like this is the null coalescing operator right here that I'm just basically using. And I want to save the changes. Let's experiment with what is going on right here. What I'm going to do is just let me just echo this, and that means that if I type a name and then try to send that, I should be able to get whatever name the person types in as his first name right here. So let's refresh this page, and let's say that my first name is actually David, and let's hit on submit. And you see that we do have David down here, right? So we're able to grab David's name. So if we refresh in here and we did not actually type anything and then hit on submit, you see that we don't actually get anything right here. We can also do the same thing for other fields that we have in there. For instance, if we want to maybe check on that of the last name right there, so I could change this something to, let's say this is going to be last name, change that to last name, and then we can have an echo. I'm going to just comment this out, save the changes, and then within here, if I type my other name right here, let's say David, let's say Sam, and then we hit on submit. You see that we do have Sam right here. So what I'm trying to get at is that we can just basically pick all of these fields that we're having here one after the other and then put them in separate variables. But there is still other ways where we can actually do this. We can just basically put this in an array and just use one variable to grab all of them. However, what I'm going to do right now is I've actually checked. I think this have already taken a lot of time already. And I'm going to just basically stop the video right here. And then in the next one, we're going to work on this properly, where we should be able to sanitize the input right here, make it clean, and then we'll make that a lot shorter. All right. So we're going to employ the secure way to like basically grab onto the form data. We're going to sanitize this at a later time. So if you're actually interested in getting a well sanitized input field, I want you to go to the comment section and just put the word sanitize, and I'm going to respond to that with a second part of this video. And if we get like 5 persons to actually request for this, we're going to do this and then make it a lot more secure in our next video. So I'm going to stop right here. See you in the next one.